and welcome back to a special edition of ILTV on the Hour. I'm Ladar Lazi, coming to you live from Israel with all of the biggest headlines from across the region. It's 5 p.m. here in Israel and 10 a.m. in New York, and we are on day 16 of Operation Roaring Lion. And these are all the latest developments. Israel came under fresh missile and rocket fire overnight and throughout the day today, with launches from both Iran and Lebanon. Sirens sounded across central Israel several times, with several small impact sites in Tel Aviv and other areas, which caused minor injuries and damages to properties, including to a preschool and several vehicles. Additional alerts were triggered early this morning after projectiles were launched towards southern Israel, while a rocket fired from Lebanon triggered sirens in central Israel and was also intercepted by air defenses. This follows a number of missile and rocket volleys overnight and over the weekend. And so joining us now with the latest is ILTV's executive editor, Maayan Hoffman, joining us live now from Jerusalem. Maayan, thanks for joining us. Can you bring us up to date on the latest developments?
Sure. So as you mentioned, there's just been a series of rocket sirens and shrapnel from rockets, cluster bombs falling throughout the country. The latest attack that happened in the afternoon struck several places in central Israel. One of those areas was the ultra-Orthodox city of Bnei Brak, where it's actually had several either direct hits or hits by shrapnel throughout the last couple weeks of war. And there was actually a shrapnel piece that fell directly into the street. They took hours to clean it up. We saw residents flocking to the street to see the crater-sized damage that was actually done on that street in Bnei Brak. Coming out of the city, though, there is a miracle story, apparently, where the rocket hit, causing, of course, an explosion and several pieces of not only shrapnel, but also damage that flew into various apartment buildings in the area. One of the apartment buildings was the home of a young girl who had been on the bed just moments before, moved to the shelter from the exact location where debris fell and could have obviously severely injured that child. So she was saved in just a minute before that shrapnel fell. And that follows a weekend, as we talked about, of several rocket attacks. Over the weekend, there was shrapnel hits, cluster bomb hits in many different locations, including all the way down in Eilat. We saw rockets from the north all the way to the south. And here in Jerusalem, there was also some shrapnel that fell on a local apartment building in southern Jerusalem. That building experienced severe damage, both in the parking lot as well as on the rooftop of the building. I was there today and looking at the huge Jerusalem stones that were blown off the roof. It was actually mind-boggling. We've been getting used to it, but we've seen these huge ballistic warheads, the signs of double-decker buses dropping down, obviously flattening buildings. The new cluster bombs don't have the same effect, but they certainly cause more wide-ranging damage, hitting more cities at once and not 11 buildings, but still giving them a pretty big knock.
Absolutely. So we are seeing these cluster bombs do a lot more damage. And that's, of course, as you mentioned, the miracle that the child made it into the bomb shelter. That's why it's so important to follow guidelines from Home Front Command, that when you hear that alert, when you hear that siren, you have to go into the bomb shelter. And speaking of which, I do want to talk to you about the latest guidelines from the Home Front Command, because we know that there is an ease of restrictions in some parts of Israel, but many parts still with very limited restrictions in place.
Yeah, that's correct, Lidar, for sure. So first of all, the Home Front Command announced today that they're going to be changing the way that the warning siren rings, where it's going to be. There's going to be new jurisdictions. Now, this is important because what's been happening is that we get two sets of sirens when Iran launches rockets. The first one is a warning to let us know that Iran has launched rockets toward the country. And the second is the actual siren, where you have about 90 seconds to get into your shelter. Now, for those of us, for example, in Jerusalem, we've received many more warning sirens than we have actual sirens. This is causing more people to panic. So they now decided that they're going to change the area. We make new jurisdictions so that fewer people receive the warning siren if there's less likely to be getting a rocket from Iran. So that's the first thing. But as you mentioned, most areas of the country are not going to be changing any restrictions. However, there will be some new areas. The Home Front Command just labeled them as yellow areas. These are different locations, mostly southern Israel, where there are rocket attacks. And so starting tomorrow at 6 a.m., children in those areas will be able to go back to school so long as there is shelter in the school. In addition to that, we're going to see people, they've already been allowed to go back to work and get to continue to do that. And in those areas, also gatherings will be expanded. Today, in most part of the country, you can't gather with more than 50 people in a location, again, only a location. near a bomb shelter. But starting tomorrow at 6, in those areas, 100 people will be able to gather in close spaces, again, providing a shelter. Now, it is important to note that Home Command has made very clear that if they see any change, that we will have the same restrictions put back in place, and that it is very, very important that if you are not in one of those yellow areas, that you continue to adhere to the existing restrictions. They will continue to evaluate them day by day. But as we heard from the IDF, we're expecting this war to go on longer than we originally thought, at least until Passover, it seems. We spent Purim in shelters, possibly also Passover, but people need to really adhere to those restrictions, which is going back to that first report. We saw today in Tel Aviv, a rocket shrapnel fall down, and somebody, I understand, broke both of his legs, was blown to the side of the boat. There was video from that attack. A miracle in Bnei Brak because the young girl was in the shelter. So Home Command guidelines are guidelines that are really not just recommendations, they are guidelines for your safety as a community.
Absolutely. Maayan Hoffman, thank you so much for the update at this hour.
Thank you.
And meanwhile, the Israel Defense Forces says its air campaign inside Iran is intensifying, with more than 200 targets struck in the past day alone. IDF Chief of Staff Eyal Zamir said just recently that contrary to reports in foreign media, Israel does not face any shortage of interceptor missiles, and that he expects the war will continue through Passover. That's at least another 2 weeks. Meanwhile, the IDF says it still has thousands of targets to strike inside Iran, and revealed that many of the strikes to date have been focused specifically on Iranian missile launchers in an effort to reduce the scale of attacks on Israeli territory. Meanwhile, Defense Minister Israel Katz made statements over the weekend regarding the operation. Let's listen to what he had to say.
גם חיל האוויר הישראלי ממשיך בגל תקיפות עוצמתי בטהרן ובכל איראן. איראן מפעילה טרור וסחטנות אזורית ועולמית כדי להרתיע את ישראל וארצות הברית מלהמשיך במערכה, ונענית בעוצמת פלדה חזקה ובלתי מתפשרת. אנחנו נכנסים לישורת ההכרעה במאבק בניסיונות המשטר לשרוד, תוך גרימת סבל הולך וגובר לעם האיראני לבין כניעה. רק העם האיראני יכול לשים לזה סוף במאבק נחוש עד להפלת משטר הטרור והצלת איראן.
And the United States is also escalating its military campaign against Iran, striking targets on Karj Island, the country's main oil export terminal, while vowing to keep open the Strait of Hormuz amid Iranian efforts to block and target shipping. U.S. President Donald Trump says American forces totally obliterated Iranian military targets on the island, which handles around 90% of Iran's oil exports. And Trump said oil facilities were spared for now, but warned they could be targeted if Iran continues to threaten shipping in the Strait of Hormuz. The president also said multiple countries may send warships to help protect the oil tankers, including China, France, Japan, South Korea, and the United Kingdom. Trump said the U.S. will ensure the strait is open, safe, and free one way or the other. And speaking to reporters earlier this weekend, U.S. President Trump had this to say about the war.
Are you speaking with Prime Minister Netanyahu, and are your objectives the same in terms of ending the war?
Well, I think they might be a little different, I guess. They're a different country than we are. But he will tell you there's never been a power like the power of the United States. I built our military in my first term.
How long now do you think the war is likely to last?
I can't tell you that. I mean, I have my own idea, but what good does it do? It'll be as long as it's necessary. They've been decimated. Their country's in bad shape. The whole thing is collapsing.
And joining us now with more on the situation inside of Iran is Tamal Gindin, an expert on Iran at the Esli Center at Haifa University. Tamal, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So, can you share with us what the situation is like for the people of Iran inside the country today after nearly 2 weeks of war?
It's very difficult to get exact information because the internet is mostly down. It's almost completely blocked. The 1% is people with very high technical abilities or regime accounts that can still connect freely to the web, and they give the Islamic Republic propaganda. What I could make out of things that my friends can gather from their friends. I'm only in touch with Iranians through third parties, so as not to put them in danger, is that they don't want to read foreign media about the situation in Iran because their spirit is not broken, but outside they say that their spirit is broken. There have been a lot of things that also hurt civilians. One of the major things was last Saturday, not yesterday, Saturday before, bombing the oil repositories in Tehran, creating an environmental disaster with all the smoke, and then the rain came down, so the air got clear, but the rain itself was polluted. The island of Kharg, I think that it was a good idea to bomb the military bases and not the oil infrastructure, because one should keep in mind that there is the day after the war, hopefully with a better regime or with a better government, maybe even one that the Islamic people want, although it seems that Trump's advisors are not on the Iranian people's side, but on the Islamic Republic side so far. But for Iran of the day after, all the oil infrastructure and economic infrastructure are very important. We want to rebuild Iran after the Islamic Republic falls. That's another thing, that the name Iran often serves for the Islamic Republic, but one should distinguish between the people and the land and the resources that are used by the IRGC. Okay, that oil repository was used by the IRGC, but also by the people, and it was a great fire next to residential areas. So I thought it would turn the people against the war, because so far the people have been very, very supportive of the war. The minute the war broke, they were dancing in the street. The minute it was announced that the leader died, there was dancing and demonstrations of happiness and dances on social media. We get it less because there's, people got used to it. But from what I hear, the spirit is not broken, or at least not to the extent that's portrayed in foreign media.
Absolutely, because the internet is still shut down inside of Iran. So most of what we are seeing coming out of Iran, although we are seeing a lot of social media videos come out still, but the majority of the information that's being put out there is put out by the Islamic regime itself. That's a very, very important point. And I do want to ask you what the status of the regime is today, because we've seen thousands of bombs dropped. We've seen Israel and the U.S. target so many regime, not only officials, but also infrastructure. What is the status today of the regime?
That's one of the most mysterious questions, because there is a new leader. He was inaugurated last Monday, with a picture because he was not present. No one has seen him since February 28th. We don't know if he's alive. If he's alive, we don't know if he's conscious. We don't know what his condition is. His first address to the nation was read by a television, no one has seen him. But also before that, people say that he was very influential in the regime, but it was always behind the scenes. So maybe they're either trying to have a leader but not have a leader. Some Iranians say that they're trying to put Israel and the U.S. on a manhunt on a person who doesn't exist, so as to make us waste energy. And others say that he's in coma, and there's some committee now that's running the country, maybe the Guardian Council, and they're just saying that he said that. And to me, it reminds me of the hidden imam of the 12 Shia. That's the religion of the Islamic Republic. They have 12 imams that continue Muhammad, and the last one disappeared when he was 4 or 5, and he will return at the end of days. And I've already seen social media accounts, of course, linked to the Islamic Republic, that call Mujtaba Khamenei the hidden imam, not only the hidden leader. So it's all very, very suspicious, all the things that are going on around him.
A lot of psychological warfare and misinformation being put out by the regime. Now, I do want to ask, because the IDF has been degrading the internal suppression forces, but there's a lot of speculation and a lot less certainty, as you said, that while before there seemed to be real confidence that the people of Iran could, at the end of this war, bring down the regime, today it seems some leaders are not as confident. You said the Iranian spirit is not broken. I mean, we've seen tremendous, incredible resilience and bravery from the people of Iran. So what do you make of this? Do you think this regime's days are numbered, or will it be able to, come out on the other side of this war?
The reason I think Trump's advisors are from the regime lobby is because I know some names and I know that they are from regime lobby. I see what they write, what the reactions on social media are to what they write. And Trump says he wants someone from the inside because Pahlavi, the crown prince, doesn't have grassroots support. Now, he ignores the fact that in the demonstrations, they called out his name. He ignores the fact that when he said Thursday night, everyone's on the street, the demonstrations turned from thousands to millions. They ignore the fact that even anti-royalists inside Iran support Pahlavi now because he's the image around which they can all unite. And he says he doesn't want to be a king like his father, but just stabilize Iran and then hand it to the Iranian people for a government that of their choice. And when the internet in Iran was blocked, his views on Twitter dropped by tens of millions of views per video. So he does have support inside. All the Iranians say they support him inside and out. But what Trump says is, I want someone from the inside. But all the people on the inside are from the regime. Whether they're reformist or fundamentalist, they are all from the regime. And the people, this is a demonstration from outside Iran. This is from inside Iran, what we see now, burning a mosque and chanting Iran, Iran. This is what they do. The war in January was Iran against the Islamic Republic. And another demonstration chant is Islah talab usulgara dige tamum majara. Reformist, fundamentalist, your story is over. They don't want someone from the inside, but the Iranian lobby on the outside is very strong. They have professors who write articles in English, who are advisors to the Department of State or to the president, and even analysts who read articles in English instead of listening to what the demonstrators say.
So the Islamic regime's arm stretching into Washington, D.C., although I wouldn't discount President Trump yet because he has a way of surprising the world. But Tamal Gindin...
I'll just say that Iranians themselves say, okay, so he said that. He says one thing and the opposite every day, a few times. We have to see what he does and not what he says.
Absolutely. And time, of course, will tell. Tamal Gindin, thank you so much for joining us today and for giving us just a brief insight into life inside of Iran. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And pivoting now to the northern front, the IDF continued intensive airstrikes across Lebanon over the past day, targeting positions belonging to Hezbollah. But before we get into the IDF's operations in Lebanon, a short update at this hour. The IDF spokesperson has revealed that the terrorist who carried out the attack on the synagogue in Michigan last week, that's the car ramming attack in the United States, was actually the brother of a Hezbollah commander who was eliminated by IDF strikes last week as well. So we have two brothers, one a terrorist in Hezbollah trying to kill Israelis in Israel, and the other a terrorist in the United States trying to kill Jews in Michigan. Neither one particularly successful, both now eliminated. And with that, back to IDF operations in Lebanon, the military says fighter jets hit rocket launchers, weapons depots, and command sites used by Hezbollah, all part of an effort to reduce the threat to northern Israel. We have IDF ground troops stepping up operations over the weekend, reportedly killing dozens of Hezbollah operatives during targeted raids in southern Lebanon. Now, the IDF says forces are clearing Hezbollah infrastructure and destroying weapons, but despite the heavy losses, Hezbollah is believed to still retain about 20% of its pre-war capabilities, including the ability to fire rockets and missiles towards Israeli communities. And Israel is reportedly preparing for a major ground offensive in southern Lebanon aimed at pushing Hezbollah away from the border and destroying its military infrastructure. U.S. and Israeli officials say the plan would see forces seize the area south of the Litani River. Now, this reports come after Hezbollah fired more than 200 rockets toward northern Israel in a coordinated attack with Iran last week. Meanwhile, the IDF chief has ordered a broad reinforcements of troops in the north, and reserve forces are also being mobilized as the IDF prepares for multiple offensive and defensive scenarios. And at the same time, a new diplomatic push may soon bring direct talks between Israel and Lebanon, according to reports in the Israeli media. The reports say negotiations could begin in the coming days, possibly in either Paris or Cyprus, as part of an international effort to end the fighting with Hezbollah. Now, the diplomatic initiative backed by France and the United States could also include formal Lebanese recognition of Israel. Now, under the reported plan, the Lebanese armed forces would deploy south of Litani, take responsibility for disarming Hezbollah, and pretty much the same thing we heard in the previous ceasefire. So with that, I would like to invite our next guest, Dr. Barak Books, the Patterson Chair in Security and Intelligence and a lecturer at the Political Studies and Communication Schools at Bar-Ilan Universities. Barak, great to have you on.
Good afternoon.
So the big question today, which is it? Is Israel heading towards a war, a ground invasion of Lebanon, or to a possible peace treaty with Lebanon?
I think parallel lines, meaning that there is, and I reported in many interviews that I held, that for almost 2 weeks there are efforts of producing some sort of ceasefire, beginning with the chief of staff of the French army meeting the head of the Lebanese army, beginning with meetings in the house of Nabi Berri, the head of Amal, with the Lebanese prime minister and the chief executive consulting the president. And also something interesting, that in Al Mayadin, which is a channel affiliated to Hezbollah, the head of the branch from Geneva of this channel quoted France saying that they want to go back to December 2024, meaning this is the will of Hezbollah. This is one line. But the other line is that Hezbollah had been discovered to have and maintain a very lethal weapon, and it's bombing with the, let's say, collaboration with Iran almost in a coherent manner, our country, and thus this has to be stopped. The lesson that we learned from that in one sentence is that albeit operations of the Lebanese army, and they did do something, Hezbollah maintained power and it's still threatening.
Absolutely, because, the peace treaty would offer recognition of Israel, this according to reports, and that is a very, very tempting offer. But it would also force Lebanon to disarm Hezbollah and push it back to the Litani. And as I mentioned, this is exactly what was already expected of Lebanon in the previous ceasefire agreement. I mean, so what's changed now? Why should Israel agree to this now, when it's clear that Lebanon cannot or will not fulfill this part of the agreement to essentially disarm and push back Hezbollah?
Okay, I want to do a reality check. Israel and Lebanon signed a peace agreement in May 1983, and I'm teaching my students and showing them videos, and they're astonished. But the thing is, the Lebanese never consider it to be a peace, but the end to the 1982 entrance of the Israeli army to Lebanon. Lebanon does not, is afraid, let's say, of saying the word peace. And I'm not expecting a peace, but some sort of an agreement of a ceasefire. The thing is with Hezbollah, we have to understand the Shiites. And the Shiites 50 years ago, in the outbreak of the civil war, did not have any status in Lebanon, and suddenly they became the bread takers and those who run the country. in their eyes, psychologically, giving up the weapons is going back in a bad memory lane to the 70s to being the servants of the affluent persons of Beirut. They cannot do that. What can we do? First of all, the Lebanese army operated in a minor manner, but it portrayed it as they did so much, brought diplomats to the border, and even the head of the army presented a report that went high to the French President Macron. All 566 rockets and 177 launchers and tunnels, etc., and 11 passes. I must say that Lebanese army soldiers were killed in dismantling one of the tunnels near Tyre. But it's not enough. And maybe a new agreement from a few days ago between Julani, the president of Syria, also to fight Hezbollah, may produce something, but it is needed to be clear that Israel cannot agree to a continuation of Hezbollah in any part of Lebanon holding these weapons. In one sentence, in a meeting of the Lebanese army, the head of the army said that the solution is political. So please operate.
And I do want to ask about the situation inside of Lebanon. You gave us a little bit of an important history lesson there, but how popular today is Hezbollah inside of Lebanon, having dragged the country into this war?
I think the final sentence of yours is the answer. It dragged Lebanon to a war that is a war for Iran. Hezbollah in Arabic is called Mukawama. Mukawama is resistance in order to resist and maintain the sovereignty of the country. But they gave Lebanon as a tool to Iran, as a present. There are many voices culminating with Shiites resisting Hezbollah. And I'm saying, let's understand the structure of Lebanon. It's not only religion, but affluent families and respected family leaders. I presume there are many Shiites that are against Hezbollah, that were not enjoying 30 years of Nasrallah. Maybe they are the power inside the Shiites to resist Hezbollah and convert Shiite representation in Lebanon into something else.
And you think that's likely? And also, following up on your question, I mean, you mentioned before that, the word peace in Lebanon is something that most Lebanese don't want to hear. So, I mean, are you saying that today this French offer that's on the table for recognition of Israel, that's something that actually won't really pass in Lebanon?
I'm not saying so. I'm saying that in Lebanon, surprisingly, it's a democratic country and they have a law protecting the media. Many voices in Lebanon throughout the years said they want peace with Israel. Yes, they did. But Lebanon as a country and the Lebanese political arena are very afraid in putting it on the table and defining the situation as normality and peace. Maybe they will hold the frame of some sort of mutual living projects. And I want to tell the audience that there were two meetings prior to the war, civilian meetings between an Israeli representative and a Lebanese representative to promote projects, civilian projects. Something may be done, but the word peace is too big.
That's an unfortunate reality. On paper, it sounds wonderful, a potential peace agreement, but the reality, as we know, in this region is always far more complex. Dr. Barak Books, thank you so much for joining us today and for updating us on this very important issue.
May we have a quiet night and an end to all hostilities with our victory.
Amen to that. Thank you. And with that, that's a wrap for today's news. For the latest updates from Israel on all your devices, you can follow our ILTV channels and keep up with us on social media on all our platforms. Stay informed with the latest news straight from the heart of Israel. That's been our 5 o'clock update. I'm Lidar Lazi. Be well. Don't forget to watch our ILTV News main broadcast tonight at 8 p.m. Israel time. Thank you so much for watching and stay safe.